In viewing the following program, parental discretion is advised.
Today, these kind of viewer discretion warnings are common. But in the 1970s, that just didn't happen on the regular during primetime, at least not until 1977. That's when we were introduced to Soap, a sitcom that didn't just bend the rules. It mocked them. On screen, it was a hit, but off screen, it was a non-stop war with censors, advertisers, moral crusaders, and yeah, its own network. This is the rise and fall of Soap, the sitcom that was far ahead of its time and paid the price. Before we start, like this video if you watched Soap back in the day, and subscribe for more retro TV deep dives. Now, to understand the genius of Soap, we have to start with the show's producer, Susan Harris. By 1977, Harris was already known as one of the sharpest minds in television writing. She'd written for All in the Family and Maude, two shows that proved comedy could tackle serious issues without losing its punch. But she was restless and wanted to do something entirely new, something that blended the ridiculous with the real. Her idea was simple and to some insane, a primetime parody of daytime soap operas. At the time, soaps were one of television's most consistent performers, serialized melodramas that left viewers hanging at the end of each episode and coming back the next day to find out what happened. But nighttime was still ruled by episodic sitcoms with neat endings where viewers could jump in and out at any time without getting lost. Harris's concept flipped that. Instead of tidy one-off stories, she wanted an ongoing saga, something where you had to tune in each week to find out what happened next. But instead of tears and tragedy, she'd fill it with absurdity. Cheating husbands, alien abductions, demonic possessions, all told through the lens of biting satire. When Harris pitched it to ABC, executives stared in disbelief. A half-hour comedy with a serialized story about infidelity, impotence, and homosexuality? They didn't know if she was a genius or needed to be committed. But ABC needed a hit, and the 1970s were a time when Norman Lear had just proven that controversy could equal ratings. All in the Family had audiences arguing around the water cooler, and ABC wanted some of that magic. So reluctantly, they gave Harris the green light. The next big hurdle was casting. Harris wanted actors who could play ridiculous storylines completely straight. That was the secret sauce. The humor wouldn't come from jokes, but from people taking absurd things seriously. She found her anchor in Katherine Helmond, a classically trained actress who could deliver comedy with elegance. Helmond would play Jessica Tate, the blissfully naive matriarch of an upper-class family collapsing under the weight of scandal. Opposite her was Cathryn Damon as her sister Mary Campbell, working class, sensible, and perpetually surrounded by chaos. Richard Mulligan was cast as Mary's neurotic husband, Bert, whose wild physical comedy would become one of the show's signatures. Robert Guillaume joined as Benson Dubois, the family's quick-witted butler, the only sane person in a house full of lunatics. Guillaume's understated performance would not only steal scenes, but later earn him his own successful spin-off. And then there was Billy Crystal, cast as Jody Dallas, the first regularly appearing gay character on a primetime sitcom. It was a bold, history-making decision that instantly set the series apart. The cast rounded out with a mix of veterans and newcomers: Robert Mandan as Chester Tate, Jessica's unfaithful husband; Donnelly Rhodes as Dutch Leitner, an escaped convict and Jessica's lover; Robert Urich as Peter Campbell, a tennis pro and Jessica's lover; and Ted Wass as Danny Dallas, Mary's son entangled in mob threats and romance. Together, they built an ensemble that could juggle farce and heart in equal measure. But before anyone got a chance to see what they were capable of, the controversy had already begun. Religious groups, moral organizations, and advertisers launched a campaign to stop it. The National Council of Churches accused it of mocking morality. The National Federation for Decency, led by Reverend Donald Wildman, labeled it smut disguised as satire. Local affiliates were flooded with complaint letters about a show no one had even seen. ABC was bombarded with demands to cancel it. Sponsors pulled out before the premiere. Procter & Gamble, one of TV's biggest advertisers, withdrew its support. One ABC executive later recalled, "It was like we'd bought a time bomb. Every day we got another letter saying we doomed America's children." To calm the outrage, ABC made a move that would define Soap's legacy. They added a warning before every episode. It was the first American television series to consistently use the viewer discretion advised warning label before its episodes. And funny enough, that warning only made more people tune in. When Soap premiered on September 13, 1977, it drew over 20 million viewers. Critics were divided down the middle. Time called it brilliantly absurd. The New York Times called it pornography with a laugh track. But the public? They couldn't look away. For a show under siege, it was an undeniable hit. Audiences were hooked by its serialized storytelling and cliffhanger endings. It wasn't just another sitcom, it was appointment television. People needed to know what happened next. Jessica's affairs, Mary's crumbling marriage, and Jody's emotional turmoil kept viewers gossiping at work and school. But the show's success only intensified the pressure. The network's Standards and Practices Department, the censorship board, became a permanent presence on set. Scripts were reviewed line by line. Words like affair, prostitute, and homosexual were flagged or deleted. In one case, an entire subplot involving Jody's love life was rewritten overnight after ABC executives panicked that it might offend the Bible Belt. It was clear the network had unleashed a successful monster that it was struggling to control. By early 1978, Soap was one of ABC's top-rated comedies, but its own network seemed determined to rein it in. Every week brought a new complaint, and every complaint brought new restrictions. Susan Harris fought bitterly to preserve her scripts. She believed satire only worked if it pushed the boundaries, but ABC wanted the edges sanded down. The censorship became surreal. One memo objected to the phrase "making love," suggesting being affectionate instead. Another demanded that a scene involving a priest be rewritten to avoid potentially anti-Catholic overtones. Harris once quipped, "We spent more time writing around words than writing them." Meanwhile, the actors felt the strain. Billy Crystal, in particular, faced enormous pressure. As one of TV's first gay characters, his portrayal was under a microscope from both sides. Conservatives who hated the idea, and LGBT advocates who worried it would be played for laughs. To Crystal's credit, he fought to make Jody human, not a punchline. His performance earned respect from audiences and critics alike, but the writing around him became tangled by compromise. Network executives demanded storylines that made him less political, forcing writers to create bizarre plot detours. He suddenly began dating a woman. Then a subplot involved hypnosis, amnesia, and a potential gender reassignment that was later reversed mid-season. Each attempt to make him more palatable only made the show feel less confident in itself. Behind the scenes, Billy Crystal remained professional, but he later admitted how confusing it was to play a character whose defining trait kept being erased. Harris was furious. "They wanted him gay enough to get headlines," she said, "but not gay enough to offend advertisers." It was a battle between artistic honesty and network survival. Despite all of it, Soap became a cultural event. It earned Emmy nominations for writing and acting. Critics marveled at its ability to combine chaos and emotion. The Washington Post called it television's bravest experiment. But ABC didn't know what to do with a hit that made them uncomfortable. Executives were stuck between celebrating the ratings and dodging phone calls from angry affiliates. In 1978, the network quietly reduced the number of episodes ordered for season 2, citing budget constraints. But insiders knew the real reason: controversy fatigue. The show's own success had become a liability. Each week, thousands arrived at network headquarters, from church leaders, parent groups, and local affiliates, all demanding Soap be taken off the air. A new wave of conservative activism was taking hold in America. The so-called family values movement was gathering strength, and Soap was its favorite target. Reverend Donald Wildman of the National Federation for Decency even claimed credit for pressuring sponsors to drop out. Within months, companies like General Mills, Johnson & Johnson, and Bristol-Myers pulled their ads. For a network, losing that kind of money was a warning shot. ABC didn't cancel Soap, at least not yet, but what it did instead may have been worse. The network began quietly rewriting its DNA. Every episode went through dozens of rounds of revisions. The network's Standards and Practices Department, the same unit that monitored Three's company for suggestive language, now treated Soap like radioactive material. Scripts were combed for anything that might cause viewer discomfort. Entire pages were crossed out in red ink. Writers were told to soften religious jokes, delete bedroom scenes, and remove words that today would be considered innocent. Susan Harris later recalled how ridiculous it became. "We'd have a priest blessing a sandwich, and ABC would worry it was sacrilegious." She fought back constantly, arguing that the satire only worked if it felt dangerous. But as she said in one interview, when you're fighting censors, you lose time, you lose spirit, and eventually you lose the show. The cast noticed too. What had once been a fast-moving, fearless production started feeling anxious and fragmented. Richard Mulligan, whose physical comedy had once been central to the show, complained that scenes were now being reshot days later after new network notes came in. Scripts that had been sharp and daring now limped to air half-cut and neutered, and it only got worse from there. By season 3, the tension between Harris and ABC had become open warfare. The network apparently didn't understand serialized storytelling. Executives wanted jump-in episodes that could air out of order. Harris refused, but they did it anyway. And when they did, continuity broke down. Storylines became inconsistent. Jokes fell flat without context. Viewers who missed one week were confused by the next. And if the first 3 seasons were a battle, the 4th was a massacre. By 1980, the moral majority, led by Jerry Falwell, had become a major political force. The same group that rallied against The Exorcist and rock music now turned its fire towards soap. They called it the most immoral show on television. Network affiliates in the South began refusing to air it. Some stations preempted it entirely, replacing episodes with reruns of Happy Days or local news specials. Even the network's own promotion department went cold. While ABC ran heavy ad campaigns for shows like Three's Company and Taxi, soap got almost none. And then they began meddling with the schedule. In 1980, for season 4, the network moved soap from its stable Thursday slot to Wednesday nights, then later to Monday, facing tough competition like Mork and Mindy and Little House on the Prairie. Harris knew the pattern. She'd seen it happen to other shows. When a network wants a program gone, they move it around until the audience can't find it anymore. In interviews, she called it the silent cancellation. Behind the scenes, morale was sinking fast. Cast members began auditioning for other roles, unsure if the show would survive the next season. Even the studio audience, once rowdy and electric, could sense the tension. Tapings dragged, jokes were rewritten mid-show, and applause signs flashed longer than laughter. Then came the final blow, cancellation by stealth. After season 4, ABC quietly announced soap would not return. The official reason? High production costs and declining ratings. But insiders said otherwise. The show still had respectable numbers for its time slot and strong international syndication sales. All signs pointed to the real reason being political heat. Soap had become a liability in the eyes of advertisers and executives, desperate to project a cleaner image. Even the show's finale became a victim of interference. Harris had written a shocking cliffhanger to set up the next season, complete with murder, amnesia, and unresolved love triangles. A parody of the very soap tropes she was mocking. But ABC refused to fund additional episodes to resolve it. On April 20th, 1981, soap aired its final episode. There was no official goodbye, no closure, no grand finale. For loyal fans who'd followed every absurd twist, it was a cliffhanger that would never be resolved. But not all was lost. In 1979, ABC had already launched a spin-off starring Robert Guillaume's character, Benson. It was the network's attempt to bottle soap's popularity, minus the controversy. Benson was everything soap wasn't. Clean, straightforward, and safe. And ironically, it became a hit. Guillaume won an Emmy. Benson lasted 7 seasons, outliving its parent show by half a decade. To Susan Harris, it was bittersweet. She was proud of Guillaume's success, but she knew what it symbolized. Television rewarding the watered-down version while punishing the original. Still, she didn't stop writing. After Soap, Harris went on to create The Golden Girls in 1985, another boundary-breaking comedy that proved audiences could handle honesty if you treated them with intelligence. It became one of the most beloved shows of all time. Many fans see The Golden Girls as her quiet revenge, the moment she finally got to make television on her own terms. As years passed, Soap became something else entirely, a cult classic. Cable reruns in the late 1980s introduced it to new audiences who could finally watch without the cultural panic of the 70s. Critics who once mocked it began praising it as visionary. They saw how it laid the groundwork for serialized storytelling and comedy, paving the way for shows like Desperate Housewives, Arrested Development, and The Good Place. Modern viewers marveled at how fearless it was. A gay main character, interracial relationships, mental illness, even alien abduction, all treated with humor and surprising empathy. It was everything network television had once feared. and everything modern audiences now celebrated. In 2007, Soap was ranked by Time magazine as one of the 100 best TV shows of all time. Not bad for a show ABC once apologized for airing. Looking back, Soap's downfall wasn't a failure. It was just ahead of its time. And when it paid the price for its boldness, it taught a generation of writers how fragile creative freedom really is. Susan Harris summed it up best years later. "I didn't set out to shock people. I just wrote what people already knew, and TV wasn't ready to hear it." If you enjoyed this video, give it a quick like and subscribe for more retro TV rewinds. And don't forget to share your favorite soap memory in the comments. Thanks for watching.